Well, thank you for joining me. I'm really excited to be talking to you. I'm thrilled actually at your brand and your content, and I wanted to hear more about what it is you do. But before we go into that, I was wondering whether you might be able to give us a path that you've traveled, where you've moved from. You've been in asset management, you've been in various different roles.
So yeah, my background, I guess, I started my own personal journey when I was 13 and embarked onto that moment of epiphany that brings you to a place of finding what it is to be me, right? What it is to be I. And that was an obsession throughout my teenage years. And and then then you have to go professional at some point. You become an adult. So I started in finance for a few years, and then was very much attracted by the power of technology and what it can entail within the construct of this human experience. And so I started creating technology companies, startups in Paris first, and then Spain, and then the US and London, actually, yeah, and the UK as well. So, and in parallel, always had that inner query of how it is to have that human experience, and what is it that I feel or have the experience of, and how does that make sense, so to speak, to me, in any case. And so throughout the past 30 years, came together a series of charts that are really a visual map of how things work from my standpoint, that are all inspired from quantum physics, but also from the Eastern philosophies, religions, from the Kabbalah to the Bible to anything that I could put my hands on, really. And so distilling the concepts into a visual charts that would help me understand what it is about this, right? And hence what I call now the Heartful Method, which is really a series of sessions which I helps me and now helps CEOs and individuals or groups in companies to rewire their relationship with their reality, with themselves, and embark onto a new place of themselves that is one where we were always led by our mind with a lot of dispersion and cacophony, etc., and to a place of harmony, of simplicity, of peace, and very pragmatic, right? It's all about how can life become more and more coherent, where things start to align faster without you having a say to it, and you're surprised all of a sudden that this happens to you because again you did the initial work, which is to let go of the old little eyes that were all talking their own things on their side, right? It's like when you are when you're going in these classical concerts, you have all these musicians that are tuning their instruments, and so all, and then only when the director comes, the symphony can start, right? So it's a bit the same process we're all having, whether it's a company or individual, it's the same thing. And that the core of that method is really to learn how to listen to life on a daily basis, and understand what emerges as being active, the pattern that is active at the moment that is looking to be transformed, and then we let go of it, and then we automatically expand our potential, and everything starts to unfold faster because of that. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, as someone who comes from a background of also having since 2016 been pulled away from some of the mind towards the heart, and the
Huh?
mind is still very much involved, but towards the heart, and also spirituality. What something that the world is I think right now screaming for. They might not
Mhm.
know it, but screaming for that. The sort of Christianity, whether that be something that you buy into, but also the religious exposure to other beliefs is something I've been on a journey with. Buddhism is something that I particularly find makes a lot of sense for me, and certainly is something that we could do more of in the world today. But for me, the question to you is: you work with CEOs. How and what is it that they are most benefiting from the heart? Because clearly, as a CEO running a big organization, just talking about this, it could be an interesting concept for them. And then obviously to lead with that is something quite pioneering.
Yes, I mean, I believe we're really at the leading edge of what leadership is about here. But I mean, what does a CEO get from it? It depends on the type of CEOs. But I have CEOs that are looking to step up their game. They have a big vision and they want to really be at the forefront of who they could be, and are looking for a unifying methodology that enables them to tackle any aspect of their lives, right? And so, and they understand that life is a perpetual flow, and they are looking for the map to navigate it, so to speak. So, so these are rather advanced CEOs in that case, because they are already understanding that reality is a vibration, and so it's more of a map that they're looking for. So that's one aspect, and the outcome for them is, how would I put it, a simplified experience of themselves that enables them to have more clarity, and therefore helping them to get towards their vision in a easier way, and faster, most likely, and grander also, probably at the same time. So that's one type of CEO. Another type is one that is really feeling that it is raptured in a pattern, and it doesn't know how to get out of it. He knows that there's something, he or she, by the way, there's something out there, there's a solution, but it's circling around and around and around, and looking for something that helps him to get out of it, right? And so these CEOs will obviously benefit in the same way and with the same results that the one I just expressed earlier. However, the very first impact they're going to experience is more peace. First, the solution to the problem. let's start with that, and then out of that, a place of peace, and a place where they can really start from scratch and change completely the way they see life. So, right, because you were talking about the mind earlier. Yes, it's there, and it will always be there, right? But maybe there is a new type of experience we can take on, which is where the mind happens and it is there when it is needed, not all the time. Because the thing is, that mind we're talking about is a reflection of our essence. Our essence is always there, because that's the screen on which our reality is expressed, our life is expressed. So maybe we can go back to our essence and then invite the mind whenever it is needed, because it is needed. That's why we're having this human experience. And then when it's not needed, we are there, we are here, we're now, and we are focusing on our vision, and we're navigating that boat of ours, right? But in a more fulfilled way, and more in tune with ourselves, more in balance. And therefore more efficiently and more optimized than if we just do that through the mind.
Now, of course, this isn't just for CEOs. I mean, I was speaking to someone.
No, it's for anybody.
Yeah, and they were telling me that one of the biggest challenges they face. So this particular guest was speaking about how they work in the area of organizational behavior, particularly with regards to building adaptability, resilience in organizations, and they're actually based or have been for most of their career in Hong Kong, Asia Pacific, and working across the landscapes of the US and Europe. And it was interesting what they were saying in that one of the key challenges we face in, and I use the term West, but in the US, UK, and parts of Europe, by comparison to Asia and some of the other younger emergent economies, one of the challenges we're facing is that people have lost meaning for
Mm.
their work. They've lost purpose. How much does this play itself out within the CEO's conversation that you're having in terms of the heart? And to what extent do you think that we could influence via the CEO into the organization to try to re-energize some of that meaning, purpose, and a real motivation to want to come to work,
Mm.
and have this battle of I'd rather work at home and I don't want to commute. It's not worth my while.
It's a very good question. I mean, obviously, the CEOs usually have their own purpose already set up, or they may look for a higher purpose potentially, but they are really driven most of the time in a
Mm.
certain direction, right? They and because of that, they feel the highest urgency to be more in tune with themselves, and therefore they go towards that kind of method, the one that I offer. Now, I agree with you. This is, at the company level, this is an issue as well. How do you get engagement, but more than engagement, how do we enable each individual to be part of the flow of the company and or to help them do that for themselves? And that's where we're working on a concept now where actually, a company is a consciousness by itself
Mm.
and a spirit, so to speak. And so beyond the team, beyond culture, we have indeed the spirit of the business that is there. And and so that is interesting because all of a sudden, as a CEO, I'm the steward of that spirit. I'm not the boss or whatever. I'm here to nurture it, to guide it in its own direction. And if every individual can be feeling the same and be part of that whole flow,
Mm.
and be in communion with that spirit. So, in other words, maybe creating a certain sacred relationship with that I'm dedicating so much time to.
Mm.
That would be highly transformative for everyone and a much better output for the company as well, from a purely financial standpoint.
Mm.
So I think that would be my answer for today.
That's great. I mean, I'm interested in also understanding whether you see any differences between in the work that you do between maybe culturally, but also in terms of landscape. So you've worked in, as you said, the UK, you've worked in the US, and you're now currently based in Switzerland. Um,
Yes, and I worked in Spain too.
yeah, how would you describe sort of the heart work, the sacred work, and how it compares by these different markets? Los Angeles, for instance, is an interesting one compared to perhaps Europe and elsewhere.
Um, the sacred work, I mean, that notion of sacredness, whether it is towards ourselves, towards a temple, that's the one we tend to have, right? Or towards anything we do, is not something that is prevalent in the Western culture. It is something that I feel is quite important
Yeah.
to remember and reacquire because this is the real key to the most fulfilling experience we can have, whether it's private or personal or professional, is the same thing. And it's the best gift we can give to ourselves and to the world, and therefore to our company.
Mhm.
And that's what I nudge the people I work with to go in that direction, because in the end, that's where you really are part of the flow, right? And so to get to your question more specifically, I don't see any difference between one society and another yet. I mean, obviously there are differences, but from a sacred net standpoint that you were mentioning, we're still like babies.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. I want to come to also what individuals can do. So, the idea that this is, you deal with CEOs, and of course that has very strong implications for impact. Of course, by working with someone who has power, who has resources at their disposal, and can command and also, as you say, nurture large cultures, we make the biggest impact. Of course, if we're moving the needle in the right direction. The question I have is what can individuals do? So you're not a CEO, you're possibly a mother, father, you have different roles in life. How do we embrace this concept?
Same thing. That's why I recently launched a group session for the Heartful Method so that we can embark more people in it. The, you know, the moment you are able to really be in presence of yourself, being adopting that vibrational world that you are in, and being in tune with that instead of feeling isolated and segregated, etc., which is where we usually come from. In that very moment, you start to actually impact the rest of the world that is around you, whichever aspect we're talking about, whether it's your kids or the colleagues or even anything you watch on the news. It starts to become, how would I put it? You start becoming like a tuning fork, and all that is around you is looking to mimic that same vibration in many, many different facets and variety, right? Many colors, many shapes. So even if we're not CEOs, we still have a huge impact on the world that we're experiencing. So it's really open to everyone. What I've noticed, though, is that at the moment, the people that are seeing really the importance of it and are ready to invest themselves into it in terms of time and financial resources are CEOs. But I'm happy that more people comes, and I have sometimes wives of CEOs coming and parts and having part of that, and it works very well for them too. So it's open to everyone, really. Mm-hmm. And then planning to do it for kids as well, as soon as we have found a way to communicate it in the right way for them.
How do you practically do this? How do you practically apply your method? Is it in the form of group settings? Is it in a one-to-one setting?
So the formats. Your question has two aspects. So in terms of format, we have three different formats at the moment: one-on-one coaching or guidance, I prefer to call it, which is a weekly session, or we have group sessions, which is also a weekly session. So we have a video that is the charts that I was talking about with my comments, and then a 1 hour or 90 minutes Q&A with me, where we learn how to listen to what life is telling us throughout the situations, the events, the dialogues, the issues we're having throughout life. Again, professional, personal is the same thing. And then we learn how to understand them and release whatever belief system that is encoded in it, because it's exactly the right time to do it. And so then automatically is freed the potential that was limited before now, and off we go, and we continue the journey and grow and faster and faster. So that these are the so one-on-one guidance, group sessions, and then we also have retreats, whether cruises or very special places, usually around sacred sites, that enables us to activate further the vibration of the individuals that are participating in that. Or for companies as well, we have special events where we help to rebalance the feminine and masculine energies of the groups and help them bring more cohesion between the different parties.
Interesting. And I love how you mentioned the balancing of the feminine, the masculine, the yin and the yang. And, in some cases, I don't know if you're familiar with the term stira and sukha. This is a sense of strength and ease in Patanjali's, the Bhagavad Gita.
Yes.
The strength and ease. And I think this is a concept that certainly we increasingly are having to navigate and grapple. There's a lot of debate in the world right now of populist cultures moving towards a certain, one side or the other, driven by media and all sorts of populist movements. But finding that balance within ourselves is an interesting one, and one that I'm particularly passionate about. I do we do yoga teaching, my partner and I mean, not just for full time, we have other jobs, but we're particularly passionate in guiding other people to embrace these concepts of strength and ease, or yin and yang, and masculine, feminine. How do you, the question here for me, there is a question, how do you embrace that within yourself? So as Arnaud yourself, would you typically approach your day in trying to find that balance as a human being?
I guess one aspect of it is that the balance is there already, and so let me illustrate with something else first. When working with a group, how does one detect if the balance is more masculine or feminine, and which is the same within ourselves as well. So a group that is always insisting that there is a bad guy that they need to combat, and they're going to vanquish them and be the braves and so on, has a little bit more masculine energy than the feminine one. and and the thing that is interesting there is that if they were to open up to more feminine energy, these ghosts of the big bad guy, the big bad wolf, would disappear, or at least it would make their growth easier, right? Because of many different factors. So likewise, every single situation, every moment calls for whether a bit more masculine or a bit more feminine. It's a flow, right? Maybe I'm meeting with my partner and I will be more masculine with her if it's in that way. Or I'm negotiating a contract and then I'm going to have to be super masculine with whomever I'm negotiating a contract, and then all of a sudden I need to allow simply what may come. And you have a meeting and all of a sudden, boom, you got gifts coming right and left because it's the right moment, and you don't have necessarily a direction that is super focused, right? So I guess to answer your question, the best answer I can give is to listen intently, not only to what is happening around you, but also what is inside. So how can I match one to the other, right? And be inspired by what is around me to be whatever it is needed for me to be at that moment, whether it is super masculine, super feminine, and everything in between.
So what I'm hearing you saying is more, it's not necessarily an effort or a drive or a push. It's more a sense of being, a sense of allowing, softening into.
It's a sense. It's a sense of allowing, of being perceptive of the moment and be inspired by it to be whatever it is that I am could be, in the most optimal way. Because the thing is, I can, let's say I'm in a masculine body. Okay. So I could be, when I'm professional and when I'm at home, I am super masculine and this is my way of being, and the rest doesn't matter. Right. And I'm always that.
Yeah.
It's a tone. Right. And I'm polishing that tone all the time. Great. It's a possibility. It's a possibility that works in a certain configuration, but there is no really bending, right? It's super straight and very arrow-like.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's a perfect way of being. Why not? Then you have on the opposite side the very feminine version, which is super, super throwy and there's no center, no direction, etc. And a bit like a cloud. And it doesn't move anywhere. The way of the middle is maybe to focus on what is in this moment and being in tune with it, being able to express all these possibilities. So at some point, I may be like the super arrow we were talking about earlier. At some other point, I may be a bit of a cloud and a bit of an arrow, etc., etc. You were talking about Buddhism earlier, the way of the middle. We're just there. And it's a dance between me and me. In other words, between me, this impression that I have to be me, and the world. It's a constant feedback loop, testing what is that I should be being in this moment and doing, therefore, inspired by what is offered by life.
I love it. And what you're opening up in my mind, I think, having listened to what you've just said, is a question of ego. And one that, we all grapple with is, and certainly I would imagine a CEO, certainly the work that I've done with CEOs, typically the ego is an important one, and ego is not necessarily a bad thing. Ego is also a good thing. We need ego to in our surgeons to save lives. We need ego in certain aspects of life. It's a good thing to achieve, to drive, to keep moving forward and to progress. But then as a CEO, how does one manage or straddle this tightrope of maintaining an ego that is somewhat dissolved, in the sense that it doesn't expand too much into the organization, into the organism of those around us? In your work, how much do you grapple with these concepts of ego, particularly with CEOs, where the ego is an important driver? The CEO needs to give confidence. They need to also often present themselves in a way that isn't too soft, that isn't too, or am I misunderstanding that?
You're not misunderstanding. I mean, the ego per se, or the mind, because it's roughly the same thing, is a collection of identifications. And starting with, I am Andrew, I am Arnaud, and this is the siege of the ego, on top of which are built other layers. And so it is there. Yeah. And we can, I guess the first, as you said, it's there. The first question is whether we want to continuously identify to it or make a conscious choice and allow ourselves to have the space without ego and the space with ego. And they are both valid. They are both actually superposed one on top of the other. And we choose one or the other at some point, right? Whether it is triggered by whatever situation happens or just as a conscious choice. So it's not that the ego disappears per se. I still can get back into my space of hardness, so to speak, and do what needs to be done, etc. But I do have the freedom to choose when I go in or out of it. And this is quite important because then all of a sudden opens up amazing resourcefulness, because you can even choose the ego into which you want to go. You're not limited anymore by one, which is, and so it's a bit like you become an actor, right? Then you're playing that, the soft guy at home and the hard one at the office. And again, it's not just for men; it's for everyone. And it's quite a fine-tuned thing to be able to do, but it provides tremendous freedom and simplicity and ease when we are able to incarnate that.
So in a sense, it's putting on a cloak or putting on a hat, and having those roles or identities
Yeah.
and into those and flexing, because we're a
we,
flexing organism.
we were talking about this cacophony earlier when you have all the musicians. It's exactly that. We were already doing it unconsciously, having all these eyes talking their own thing whenever they want, etc. And so now we're converting that into a conscious choice of, obviously it's not my eye that when I was 12 that was screaming for attention for whatever. Now it is a personality that I want to use when I am with my partner, which is obviously very different than the one that I have when I use when I'm in a professional negotiation, because I'm not using the same tools, right? So so this is, and even with my partner, there are moments where I'll be one specific ego, and at another moment another specific ego, because she moves differently, and at some point she needs something else.
So it's
That
a
works.
dance, effectively. We're in a dance.
The dance, yes, obviously it's a dance, always.
Yeah, I love
Always.
it. One last question. I think we're going to be running out of time. We could talk all day about this. I'm loving it. Thank you very much.
You.
In the current world that we live in, there's this, as you say, cacophony of chaos and challenge, and not everyone is finding it easy. I think it's pretty tough on many people right now, and there's going to be a challenge for them to ease and to find a heart. Often the parasympathetic nervous system is starting to trigger certain instincts of fight, freeze, and flight. How does one manage this process to get closer to the heart on a day-to-day basis? Are there any interventions we could be, meditation, certain toolkits that we can reach out to, or books or resources that you would recommend we explore?
Well, in terms of books, I would recommend my last book, which is a journey of from I to self, and these are 66 poems where you experience the journey of I, and that will help to tune in to the heart. So that just already is something, and there's a lot of depth in each poem that can be explored many times over. So that's one thing. But besides that, I think there is one, the heart is all about simplicity. That's where we're going from complexity to simplicity. And it starts with, we have indeed all these situations we have to handle all the time. And if we were to offer ourselves the space to push one button that we all have, one trigger that enables us to have a moment where we can decide for ourselves what is going to be the next step. It's called a pause button. So whenever something happens in your life, I push the pause button, and instead of reacting to whatever is unfolding at that moment, I take the space and time, which could be a second, by the way, of saying, okay, this is what I want or I am in this moment. And in other words, all of a sudden we shifted from one place to another. And not a place of reaction of autopilot, but a place of conscious choice that enables an action. And that's a huge step. So practice that first, and then you can come back to me.
Wonderful. What a profound insight. Thank you, Arnaud. I've loved chatting, and the resources you provided, I think, is going to be a wonderful.
Yeah, you can find the book on Amazon, but on tapwhat.com, it's available there as well, and more information on the website as well.
Social media, you're on. How can people find you?
On Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook. Yeah.
Fantastic. Wonderful. Thank you so much for making the time to speak.
Thank you.
Thank you. Namaste. Have a great day.